we have to have the shalom, the peace of God, and the wholeness in our life to be able to come out of Egypt. And literally, like one of in Jewish thought, the ultimate blessing is the blessing of peace, the blessing of shalom. If you have every blessing but don't have peace, you don't have really anything, right?
So we're not talking about the 1980s, we're talking about the 5780s, the Hebrew calendar. What does the 80s in the Hebrew calendar mean?
Yeah, very significant number in the Bible. So what we have to understand is that Hebrew is alphanumeric. So in the Bible, there are no numbers, Roman numeral numbers. You write those with letters. And so the letter that represents 80 in Hebrew is the letter Pei. And Pei means a number of different things. It literally means the mouth. So this is the decade of the mouth.
Wow.
So it pays to have a big pay.
Does it?
In this season.
You're going to have to convince me of that.
Well, in a good way,
Because there's a lot of big mouths
Right.
there.
Well, not a big mouth in a negative way, but in the positive way, in the sense that influence, but that God creates the world through speech, right? So the power of the pay is the power of the mouth, right?
Or the declaration.
The power of the declaration is the power of speaking truth. It's the power of proclaiming the promises of God, which we can get into more in a moment, right? But it all has to do with breakthrough and coming out of Egypt. So when you think about the Jewish people in Egypt and in slavery, everything is connected to the letter Pei, right? Who's the evil man that enslaved the Jewish people? He's called what? The king of Egypt is called the Pharaoh, right? His begins with the letter Pei, right? Passover begins with the letter Pei.
Yeah.
The word for redemption.
First of all, Jason, we were told that there would be no tests on
No
this
tests.
You
interview.
had all the
No
answers.
tests,
I
that's
thought
right.
you were
I thought-
asking.
I- I'm
I'm trying to lob you an easy
Sorry.
one there. No.
Wow.
Yeah,
I hated school, by the way, so just
Sorry.
easy.
Were you talking to us?
Wait,
Someone back
is there
there?
some? Okay.
Hey, I love it. We're having a good time, right? So Pharaoh begins with the letter Pei. Passover begins with the letter Pei. Redemption in Hebrew, Padah, begins with the letter Pei. Think about it for a moment. Moses was 80 years old when God came to him and spoke to him in the burning bush and said, lead my people out of Egypt. So redemption, Moses is real stepping into his calling, Pei, 80 years old.
I got to jump in and ask you something. Something just hit my head. Don't lose your train of thought ever, okay? Because you're going to do most of the talking. But I just want to see if the mathematics works.
Yeah.
We're in 5782 in 2022.
Right.
So that meant 5780 started in 2020.
Right.
And that was captivity.
Oh, it's.
I mean, hello.
Right. Well, think about that, right? So we're going to tie this together. Think about it. So Moses, God says Moses, 80 years old, go. And Moses doesn't want to go because why? He says, I'm what?
80.
I'm 80, but he has
old.
what problem? His mouth.
Ooh.
I'm heavy, the Pei. He says he's 80 years old, 8, which is the Pei. So God says, go use your Pei. And Moses is like, I don't want to use my Pei, right? So it all connects. And then he leads the children of Israel out of Egypt. And this connects to even with coronavirus.
Wow.
Because think about it for a moment. In the decade of the Pei, in the decade of the mouth, what has the enemy tried to do? He's tried to muzzle us. Yeah. It's first put a mask over our mouths, right? Churches and congregations can't meet. You can't worship, right? Which is the whole coming out of Egypt, let my people go that they might worship me. Well, now we can't get together in worship in the decade of the Pei, the coming out of Egypt. And then you have literally the coronavirus attacks the lungs, the coughing, the tube. If it's serious enough that you can't speak, they have to intubate you, right? And then on top of that, then you wind up with cancel culture, which is literally trying to cancel out people's voices so that in the decade of the Pei, they don't have a voice.
Okay. First of all, Happy New Year. It is 2022. Jason Sobel, your book, Aligning with God's Appointed Times. We're just starting to kind of get into this. And this is one of our gifts this month. And so far, I'm a little bit caught off guard. I thought I knew exactly where we were headed with this, but this is super interesting. 5780, it was basically matching to 2020. A lot of what the numeric description of 5780 in the decade of was manifest on Earth in a very unique way. We're getting that. So if somebody just tuned in, is just getting with us and just getting started, 5782 means?
It's the year of peace and wholeness. In Hebrew, shalom and shlemut.
Okay. But we're still in the decade of the 80s, which means something in the Hebrew calendar. And the second year, or going into the second year of that decade, peace. And you said it even tracked to the Aaronic blessing.
Yes.
Okay. How?
Yeah, so the overall theme of the decade is coming out of Egypt, of breaking through, and the idea of Egypt, and even this idea of the mouth and Moses not wanting to use his mouth, is Egypt in Hebrew literally means a place of confinement or restrictions. There's things that want to confine us and restrict us, and this is the decade to break through those either self-limitations like Moses put on himself. I'm old, my mouth doesn't work. There's self-limitations. There's the
I don't have enough education. It's this, that, whatever.
I'm not beautiful enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not whatever. There's those self-limitations that we put on ourselves, those inner voices, right, that tell us we're not good enough or don't measure up. Then there's also there's the inner pharaohs, right? And then there's the outer pharaohs, the outer forces that try and limit us, confine us, box us in, beat us down from becoming the person God has created to be and to do the mission and the calling that God has created us to be able to do, right? So that's the overall theme of the decade. But this particular year of the decade, in order to experience that coming out and breaking through and limitations, we have to have the shalom, the peace of God, and the wholeness in our life to be able to come out of Egypt. And literally, like one of in Jewish thought, the ultimate blessing is the blessing of peace, the blessing of shalom. If you have every blessing but don't have peace, you don't have really anything, right?
Right.
And one of the places we see this is this idea of God commands Aaron to say this blessing over the people. It's known as the Aaronic benediction. The last expression in the Aaronic benediction, may he cause his face to shine upon you, v'yasem lecha shalom in Hebrew, equals 782, as in the year 5782.
Wow. People need some hope. People need peace. And you know, Jason, we always hear about your breakthrough and it's coming, and we've heard that for decades.
Right.
You know, and I just think we were talking back in the back about how do we know this? Is it just by using your faith that, okay, I'm going to just go ahead and believe in what he says? Give us, say it for me, like you always do so good. Okay, ready, go.
Let's do it this way. How do we get our audience to believe that these numbers are not random, that they really do connect, that these the Hebrew calendar matching to our present day circumstances in January of 2022 really means something? Help us get our head around that in a way that we attach our faith to it.
Yeah, so obviously, I think there's this verse in Scripture that says it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, it's the glory of the King to seek these things out. In Messiah Yeshua, Messiah Jesus, we are royalty. And part of our royal calling is to search out the scriptures, to search out the hidden things, and to kind of make these connections. And that's why all sorts of people are praying, like, God, show me, what does this year mean? What is the spiritual significance of this new season? What is the spiritual significance of this decade? And one way God speaks to me and through many Jewish people is through numbers, right? And which makes sense in a sense because we live in a mathematical universe, right? So if we live in a mathematical universe, numbers should matter. And numbers are important in the Bible. And especially when you see these numbers and numerical patterns that connect in a very significant and a very real way, it can't be just random. It's kind of like looking at the creation and thinking there's no God, right? There's no way that something could be that intimate, something that could be that connected and put together, and somehow that is there all randomly. And so I think there is something biblically significant about the numbers. There's a long Jewish tradition of understanding the connection between words and concept numerically, which goes back to the Bible, right? Which goes back to the book of Revelation. The mark of the beast is 666, for example. Or why did Jesus rise from the dead on the third day? Or why were there 6 stone pots at the wedding of Cana of Galilee? There's a number of different numbers.
Why are there 6 stone pots, by the way? That's a good one.
He's a machine.
Well, the reason why there's 6 stone pots is because 6 is the number of man. Man was created on the 6th day. And in Jewish thought, we fell on the 6th day. And as a result of that, lost 6 things. And 6 is the number of connection in Hebrew. That's the important thing. We're talking about numbers and letters. 6 in Hebrew is the number of connection. Well, when we sinned in the beginning, we broke the connection between heaven and earth. Literally, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, in Hebrew, there's 7 words. The 6th word begins with the 6th letter of the Hebrew alphabet that has the numerical value of 6, and it's the word and. God created the heavens and earth. So the letter 6, the number Vav, is a letter that connects heaven and earth. When we sinned, we broke the connection between heaven and earth. When Jesus dies, he dies on Good Friday. Well, in the Hebrew, on our calendars, Friday is the 6th day of the week. Saturday is the 7th day of the week. So Jesus died on the 6th day, which connects the number of connection, the number that connects heaven and earth, to restore what we lost and broke in the beginning.